For this video, we start with a series of unsettling recordings from a couple named Crystal and Damien, who believed they had finally found their dream home. They had purchased the house only a few months earlier, and shortly after moving in, they became engaged, beginning what should have been a new and exciting chapter in their lives. But despite everything seeming perfect on the surface, there was a constant feeling inside the house that neither of them could ignore. Something felt off, not in a dramatic or obvious way at first, but in a quiet, persistent sense that something wasn't right. As time passed, that feeling began to turn into something more tangible. Strange occurrences started happening, small at first, but frequent enough that they could no longer dismiss them as coincidence. Eventually, in an effort to prove they weren't imagining things, they installed cameras throughout the house. What those cameras captured only confirmed their fears. On August 6, 2022, a hallway camera records something unusual. It's late at night, well past midnight, a time when the house should have been completely quiet. Suddenly, there is knocking at the front door. Damien goes to check, expecting to find someone outside. But when he opens the door, there is no one there. No movement, no sound. Nothing that could explain who or what caused the knocking. And that moment is only the beginning. At another point, during an argument between the couple, the situation takes a much more aggressive turn.
Hanging out with your friends, that's how it's going to make you feel at the end of the day. Like, it feels more like...
They don't mean to do, they're not like planning on, they don't...
You know how it feels to hang out with a group of people, and they don't even want you there.
They do want you there.
They
want you there. They like you a lot. No, they don't.
That's the only reason.
They like me. They're my friends. But but they like you a lot.
They're acting rude to me.
They're not trying. That's just how they... Hey.
Behind them, a cabinet suddenly opens, and a plate falls out, crashing onto the counter without either of them touching it. They stop immediately, confused, trying to process what just happened. But before they can react, it happens again. Another plate is thrown out, this time with force, flying directly toward Damien as if something deliberately launched it in his direction. The timing of it is difficult to ignore, almost as though whatever is present is reacting to the tension between them, interrupting, or perhaps even responding to their argument. And from that point on, the activity only escalates. Later, when Crystal is home alone, the atmosphere becomes even more unsettling. She is sitting quietly, distracted by her phone, when the door to the room begins to open on its own. At first, she remains calm, assuming Damien has returned home early and is about to walk in. She waits, expecting to see him appear in the doorway. But no one comes. Seconds pass, and the hallway remains empty. That's when it becomes clear. She is completely alone in the house. And yet, the door opened anyway.
We're just gonna go to just Airbnb for the night, and just for the night, and then we're gonna figure out.
By this point, the activity had become impossible to live with. The constant tension, the unpredictable disturbances, and the feeling of being watched had taken over their daily lives. Eventually, they made the decision to leave their home, at least temporarily, hoping that distance might bring some kind of relief. But even that didn't bring closure. Determined to confront whatever might be inside the house, they later returned and attempted something far more direct, a seance, hoping to communicate with the presence and ask it to leave.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Good? Good. Okay. Close your eyes.
The response was immediate, intense, and deeply unsettling. Whatever was in that house did not respond calmly, and it certainly did not behave like something willing to leave. Instead, the activity seemed to grow stronger, more aggressive, as if the attempt to communicate had only made things worse. And that leaves a difficult question behind. Did they unknowingly make contact with something they shouldn't have? Or did their fear simply turn ordinary moments into something far more terrifying than they actually were? One thing is for sure, that footage leaves behind the feeling that whatever was inside the house had no intention of leaving quietly. Now the next case carries a similar sense of escalation, only this time it unfolds in complete isolation, with a man alone in a hotel room as the disturbances begin building around him. The original source of this footage remains unknown, having been widely shared across the internet without any clear origin. But despite that, it is often described as one of the most convincing examples of poltergeist activity ever recorded. The setting itself already adds to the unease. An empty hotel room, isolated, unfamiliar, and quiet in a way that feels slightly unnatural. The man staying there began noticing things that didn't make sense. Objects appeared to shift slightly, small movements that couldn't easily be explained, and over time, the feeling that something wasn't right became impossible to ignore. Eventually, needing proof that what he was experiencing was real, he began recording. What he captured was not just a single event, but a continuous series of disturbances that seemed to escalate as the footage goes on.
I decided to turn on my camera because there's something really scary going on in here right now. I'm in the hotel room and I was laying here watching CNN And that phone fell off its cradle, and I have no idea why. One of those cups right there fell off onto the floor down in here. And I don't know. Oh crap. I know I got that. That's crazy. The phone's not even plugged in on the wall, but it's coming off its cradle by itself. I don't know why. I don't know why that's going on, but anything? Oh. Can you tell me your name? I can't hear you. Can you maybe speak a little louder? Oh my goodness. Okay, I know you're in here. I just want to know what your name is. And if there's anything I can do to help you. Is there a place that you want to go to? A place that you need to be? Anything? Cool. Okay, it's freaking me out, but you're not really scaring me. If I open the door, will you leave? Because I really would like to get some sleep. I'm opening the door. You are welcome to leave. Can you move the phone again? Okay. Oh. If you're in here, will you move the phone again? Will you move the hanger again?
When you break down what happens in this clip, the sheer volume of activity becomes difficult to dismiss as coincidence. It begins with the desk. A heavy telephone handset suddenly lifts and drops off its base, striking the surface with force. What's notable is the man's reaction. Instead of immediately panicking, he moves closer, carefully inspecting it, showing that there are no visible wires or mechanisms that could explain the movement. Then the focus shifts to the bathroom. A towel he had just placed moments earlier is abruptly pulled down to the tiled floor, as if something unseen had grabbed it. At that point, he attempts to communicate, speaking directly into the room and asking whatever might be there to respond. Almost immediately, something does. The telephone handset moves again, this time in a way that appears controlled, almost deliberate, hovering close to the surface as though it is being held. Moments later, another object reacts. A clothes hanger suddenly launches off the desk, thrown with enough force to clearly separate it from where it was resting. What makes the footage even more unusual is the man's composure throughout the entire experience. Instead of reacting with panic, he remains relatively calm, even respectful, asking whatever is present to leave him alone. And strangely, after that moment, the activity appears to stop. The room returns to stillness, as if whatever had been interacting with him simply chose to end the encounter. Which leaves a final question behind. Was this a really well-done elaborate setup, or something far more difficult to explain? After footage like that, it becomes difficult not to pay attention when behavior changes before the camera ever captures anything obvious. And that is exactly what makes the next video so unsettling, because the first sign that something may be there comes from the dog. The footage has been widely circulated across TikTok, re-uploaded countless times to the point where its original source is no longer known. Despite that, it continues to stand out because of how grounded and ordinary the situation appears at first. The video shows a woman inside her bedroom, calmly packing her clothes for an upcoming trip. The entire scene is being recorded by a Blink security camera placed in the corner of the room, capturing everything from a fixed angle. At the beginning, there was nothing unusual. The environment is quiet, controlled, and completely normal. But that changes the moment her dog reacts to something that cannot be seen.
We'll give you a chance to see how it goes. And we drive there, it's 2.5 hours away, and it looked exactly like my vision. And immediately in my heart, like I cannot explain the feeling in my heart, like it just felt warm, and I'm like, this is it, like this is my vision. And you guys are like, wow, this sounds like such an amazing story, God is good, God is great, He is all the time, but there's more to it. And this is just, wow, looking back, I'm like, God really, He just loves us so much. But so I secured that wedding venue, it's great, everything's good to go. I signed the papers, I called Drew, he was like in the biggest PA school at the time, and so he couldn't tour with me at a test that day, and this is it, this is my vision. And so fast forward to the wedding day. Fast forward to the wedding day. The entire wedding, because it's going to pour down, storm down.
Watch the dog carefully. He is resting peacefully, completely still, when suddenly he jolts awake, his head snapping up as if he has sensed something unexpected. He immediately fixes his gaze toward the open doorway, growling and staring into the dark hallway beyond. There is a level of focus in his posture that suggests he is reacting to something specific, not just a random noise. Slowly, he gets up and walks out of the room to investigate, leaving the woman behind. You can see the shift in her demeanor almost instantly. She freezes, her body language changing as she waits, clearly aware that something isn't right. And then, without warning, something happens right beside her. A plastic water bottle resting on the dresser suddenly falls to the ground. There is no visible cause, no vibration, no movement in the surrounding objects, and no one close enough to have touched it. It simply drops, as if something unseen pushed it. That moment is enough. The tension that had been building becomes overwhelming, and she immediately abandons what she's doing and runs out of the room. Some people suggest it could be something as simple as airflow or imbalance, but others point out something harder to dismiss. Dogs are often believed to sense changes in their environment far more acutely than humans can. Subtle sounds, vibrations, even things we don't consciously perceive. And in situations like this, the question becomes more unsettling. Was the dog reacting to something natural that we simply don't understand? Or to something that wasn't visible at all? One thing is for sure, the footage leaves behind the unsettling idea that something invisible may have been close enough to affect the room around her. The next video, however, is different in almost every way, yet it creates a similar feeling, because this time the unexplained comes not from what can be seen, but from what can be heard. A blogger set out to test just how durable his iPhone 11 Pro really was, but instead of a typical drop test, he chose something far more extreme. His idea was simple, but risky. He would drop the phone into a geothermal spring while it was actively recording, hoping to capture both the inside of the spring and see whether the device could survive such intense conditions. The video was uploaded to the YouTube channel TechRacks on April 27, 2020, and what started as a straightforward experiment quickly became something far more unsettling. The location he chose is known as Diana's Punch Bowl, sometimes referred to as the Devil's Cauldron. It is a deep, circular geothermal pit located in Nevada, filled with boiling hot water. The hole itself is estimated to be around 49 feet deep, and the temperature of the water can reach nearly 200 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to destroy most electronics within seconds. During the first drop, the phone didn't capture anything particularly unusual. The footage was limited, and the only audible sound came from the drone used to record the experiment from above. But when the blogger decided to repeat the test, this time dropping the phone from a greater height, something changed. As the phone descended into the boiling water, the audio it captured was no longer empty or mechanical. Instead, it seemed to be filled with sounds that resembled human screams, distant, distorted, but undeniably similar to voices crying out. The noise wasn't constant, but it was clear enough to stand out, especially given that nothing like it had been recorded during the first drop. Even the creator himself later acknowledged how strange the audio sounded, describing it as deeply unsettling when he reviewed the footage.
The audio sounded pretty eerie, and I wanted to include kind of the unaltered version here. So I have the clip here. It was 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and I edited, for the actual video, because it's just a lot of talking, and then the drone is flying, and then I'll show you guys the actual drop here. And then right there, you could hear, it definitely sounds like some yelling. It's really weird, guys. I don't know what to think of it.
The phone continued recording these sounds for only a short time, roughly 10 seconds, before shutting off completely, likely due to the extreme heat of the water overwhelming the device. What makes this even more curious is the contrast between the two attempts. During the first drop, there were no voices, no unusual sounds, and the phone remained functional. During the second, everything changed. Some viewers have pointed to local legends, suggesting that the sounds could be linked to stories of people who may have fallen into the spring in the past, interpreting the audio as something far more supernatural. Others argue that there may be a more rational explanation. Perhaps pressure changes, trapped air escaping, or the way sound behaves underwater in extreme heat. But regardless of the explanation, one detail remains difficult to ignore. Those sounds were recorded in a place where no one should have been, and yet, something was clearly being heard. Whether those screams came from something supernatural or simply from the environment itself, the result is the same. An ordinary recording suddenly becomes deeply unsettling. The next footage carries that same kind of shock, only this time it happens inside a home, with objects moving as though something unseen has stepped into the room. The video was uploaded to Facebook by a woman from Eastern Asia, and unlike many clips online, it comes with a clear and consistent story behind it. For weeks, she claims she had been waking up to find her kitchen completely destroyed, as if something had torn through it during the night. Plates were shattered across the floor, chairs were knocked over, and everyday objects had been moved or damaged without any explanation. What made it even more disturbing was the pattern. It only ever happened while she was asleep. With no signs of forced entry and no logical explanation for the repeated destruction, she decided to set up a camera in her kitchen, hoping to finally understand what was happening inside her home during those hours. What she captured only made things more unsettling. At the start of the footage, the kitchen appears completely still. There is no movement, no sound, nothing out of place. But if you focus closely on the dinner table, something begins to happen that immediately defies explanation. A spoon resting on the surface slowly lifts into the air. There is no visible cause behind it, no string, no hand, nothing supporting it. It simply rises, hovers for a brief moment, and then drops back down onto the floor. Before there is even time to process what just happened, the activity continues. A white plate positioned near the edge of the table begins to move. At first, it slides slowly, almost subtly, as if being pushed by an unseen force. But then, without warning, that same plate is suddenly launched off the table, crashing to the ground with enough force to shatter it completely. On its own, that sequence would already be difficult to explain, but viewers later noticed something else, something far easier to miss. If you go back to the very beginning of the clip, just before any of the objects start moving, there appears to be a faint shadow passing quickly through the darkness. It's subtle, barely visible, but its timing is what stands out most. It moves just seconds before the activity begins, almost as if something entered the room. And that detail raises a much more unsettling possibility. Was this simply an elaborate trick? Or was there actually something present in that kitchen? Something moving just outside the limits of what the camera could clearly capture? Either way, that kitchen video creates fear through movement and destruction. But the next case is unsettling in a different way, because it combines strange flashes of light with shapes that look almost human, only never fully clear enough to explain. This video was recorded by a home security camera in March 2025, and later shared by a woman named Brandy, who claimed that what it captured was unlike anything she and her husband had ever experienced before. According to her, everything began late one night when both she and her husband suddenly woke up to strange and unfamiliar noises coming from somewhere inside their home. At the time, they couldn't identify where the sounds were coming from, and there was no immediate explanation for what might have caused them. The next day, they decided to review their security camera footage, hoping it might provide some clarity. Instead, it left them even more unsettled. In the recording, a bright light suddenly begins flashing inside the room. The intensity of it is strong enough to illuminate the entire space, and even the dog, who had been resting, reacts to it immediately, waking up as the flashes continue. Moments later, something else becomes visible near the doorway. What appears to be a pale face briefly emerges, positioned in a way that doesn't match any person known to be inside the house. And then, almost immediately after, another figure appears. Darker, smaller, resembling the silhouette of a child, before disappearing just as quickly. When Brandy and her husband reviewed the footage, they were left completely shaken. They confirmed that no one else was in the house that night, and that they had both been asleep in a room on the second floor while this was happening. For many viewers, the combination of the light, the face, and the figure suggests something beyond a simple explanation. But whether it was something paranormal or something misunderstood remains open to interpretation. Now, this next footage comes from an American TikTok creator named Isaac Seabram George, who for months has been documenting what he describes as relentless and escalating poltergeist activity inside his apartment. According to Isaac, the disturbances didn't begin all at once, but gradually built over time. At first, it was small things, doors unlatching on their own, subtle movements, and strange noises that could almost be dismissed. But as the weeks went on, those events became harder to ignore. He claims to have experienced doors opening without explanation, objects shifting when no one was near them, and even disembodied voices echoing through rooms that were completely empty. Eventually, the activity became so frequent that he began recording more consistently, hoping to capture something that could prove what he was experiencing. One night, while getting ready to take a shower, he heard distinct noises coming from his bedroom. Sounds that immediately stood out as unusual. Instead of ignoring it, he made a decision. He placed his phone in the hallway, positioning it so that it was aimed directly at his bedroom door, and left it recording while he stepped into the shower, completely unaware of what would happen next. What his camera captured during those moments is difficult to explain.
Just to show you, there's nobody in here. Okay. Just, I'm home alone because, I live alone. Would make a reason, would be sensible why I would live alone. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to set my camera up right there, and I'm gonna go hop in the shower.
When you break down the footage, the sequence of events becomes increasingly unsettling, especially when you remember that Isaac is just a few feet away, standing in the shower, completely unaware of what's happening in the hallway. You can hear him in the background, casually singing, which only adds to the contrast between what he is experiencing and what the camera is capturing. Focus your attention on the gap beneath the bedroom door. At first, everything appears still. Then suddenly, the light inside the room switches on, illuminating the narrow space beneath the door. But the light doesn't remain constant. Almost immediately, a shadow begins to move across it, a clear indication that something inside the room is shifting, moving back and forth, despite the door being closed. And then, the situation escalates. The door handle begins to turn. Slowly, deliberately, it rotates on its own, unlatching the door without any visible interaction. The door creaks open into the hallway, revealing the interior of the room. For a brief moment, the light flickers on again, exposing what appears to be an empty space, before everything is plunged back into darkness once more. But what many viewers consider to be the most disturbing detail isn't visual at all. It's something you can hear, but only if you listen carefully. As the door remains open, beneath the steady sound of the running shower, there is another noise. Heavy, rapid footsteps. They move quickly, directly toward the camera, as if something is running through the room and into the hallway, only to stop abruptly right at the threshold. When Isaac later reviewed the footage after finishing his shower, whatever doubts he may have had were gone. For him, this wasn't just another unexplained noise or isolated incident. It was something far more direct, something moving, reacting, and interacting with his space, while he was completely unaware and unable to respond. And that's what makes this footage especially unsettling, because whatever opened that door wasn't just present. It moved with intent, and it stopped just before reaching him. So the question remains, was this simply an elaborate setup, or did Isaac capture something that shouldn't have been there at all? With that question lingering, we've come to the last clip of this video. A group of friends who run a YouTube channel dedicated to exploring abandoned and reportedly haunted locations decided to investigate an old, abandoned hotel in Japan, a place that had already built a reputation among locals for strange sightings and unexplained activity. According to those who lived nearby, people had reported seeing shadowy figures and transparent shapes moving through the building at night, stories that had persisted long enough to give the location a reputation that was difficult to ignore. Curious to find out whether there was any truth behind those claims, the group entered the building and began exploring, carefully moving through the empty rooms and hallways. At first, nothing unusual happened. The building appeared exactly as you would expect: quiet, decaying, and abandoned. After searching for several minutes without finding anything, they decided to split up, each person taking a different direction in order to cover more of the hotel. That decision is what led to the first disturbing moment. While filming a staircase, one of the group members unknowingly captures something standing there. A completely black figure appears on the stairs, motionless and silent, blending into the darkness in a way that makes it difficult to notice at first. But when the camera shifts away and then returns to the same spot, just seconds later, the figure is gone. What makes this moment especially unsettling is that the person filming never noticed it while he was there. It was only discovered later when reviewing the footage. After nearly an hour of exploring without any direct encounters, the group made the decision to leave the building. But before they did, they left some of their cameras behind, hoping to capture anything that might happen after they were gone. And one of those cameras recorded something far more disturbing. At some point during the night, a face appears in front of the camera. It doesn't emerge gradually or from a distance. It is suddenly there, close to the lens, staring directly into it. The expression is difficult to interpret, but the presence itself is enough to make the footage deeply unsettling. After reviewing what they had captured, the group became convinced that the stories surrounding the hotel might not have been exaggerated after all, because whatever appeared on that staircase and later in front of that camera was never seen while they were inside. Now that was all for today, folks. If you enjoyed these horrifying clips, click to see more on the video on screen.